now. Fuck it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We've got a situation going on in the House right now. We've got a little bit of infighting over a situation where I think this needs to be worked out. And I think some people are arguing past each other, if you will. Check this out. House conservative defies Johnson over remote voting for new moms in Congress. Now, this is Anna Paulina Luna bringing up an idea here. Let's get into it, though, right quick. GOP Rep Anna Paulina Luna repeatedly tried to convince Speaker Mike Johnson that he, as a pro-family champion, should back her push to allow new mothers to vote remotely for 6 weeks while they are recovering from birth. He refused. Then she turned to Democrats. Yes, so I think this is not a bad idea. Now, and I'll be specific about this because they're going to go on to talk about proxy voting here in a second. And to me, remote voting and proxy voting are two very different things. Two very different things, right? Now, proxy voting essentially is you call another congressman and tell them how you want to vote, and then they vote in whatever way you want to vote, right? And it's somebody else voting for somebody else. Well, I don't like that. That's unconstitutional, right? You might think, well, that's not such a bad thing. They're still voting, right? But that's not what we pay these people to go do. And these people are already way too interested and way too time consumed, if you will, with fundraising and having dinners with lobbyists and working to shore up the interest of the lobby than they are voting in your interest to make your life easier, which is what they're supposed to be doing. This is what we pay these people to go do. They just had a 40% annual raise. So yeah, I think we need to force these people to do their damn job and vote in the interest of the American people, which they haven't done for a very long time. Right? Like they might vote for certain little pieces of legislation that people will cheer about, and then they go on to backstab every single American in this country by voting for all these garbage appropriations bills to vote to destroy our ability to manage our federal government by voting for all this deficit spending garbage, right? Like we all know deficit spending is bad. You can't do that, or you're not supposed to be able to do that. But Congress has somehow found a way to, hey, let's just print dollars we don't have. And then we can just do that and raise our national debt. Who cares about that? And they'll just act like, oh, this is a thing that we do, right? They've been kicking the can down the road for so long that they act like kicking the can down the road is just, going to the bathroom. I mean, they just act like it's just, hey, this is just a natural function of Congress. It's not, just outright. But let's keep going. The House Freedom Caucus member is now teaming up with a group of House Democrats backed by Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on a measure that would give even more flexibility to new parents, a full 12 weeks for remote voting for mothers as well as fathers. She and her lead partner on the Democratic side, a very pregnant Rep. Brittany Peterson, plan to soon force the measure to the floor using a discharge petition, which is a highly unusual step for a member to take against their own leadership. And they believe it will pass since only a handful of Republicans would need to join Democrats in support because we have such a small minority as Republicans. I'm not a Republican, by the way, but I'm kind of identifying with Republicans currently because they're the only ones that seem to have any amount of logic for the most part, right? Like Democrats, they have their moments, but for the most part, it's usually just chaos and insanity, right? With a dash of evil sprinkled out through the whole thing. I don't think that it's right for the leadership, especially Republican leadership, that prides itself on being pro-family, to be so anti-family, a defiant Luna told CNN. And really, it's a slap in the face to every single constituent that we've had that sent us to Washington, D.C. The new push for remote voting, led by a conservative Republican, reflects a younger generation of members of Congress eager to modernize the institution, as well as the intense pressure on every House member to be physically present at the time when every vote matters. In a historically thin House majority, lawmakers who are unable to vote for an array of unavoidable reasons, including birth of a child, chemotherapy treatment, or the death of a spouse, can be deciding factors factors in a bill's success. That is all correct. And it's that same tight House math that empowers individual members like Luna to buck her own party leadership and work with Democrats. Johnson told CNN in a brief interview that the practice of proxy voting, even for new moms unable to travel, is unconstitutional. And the speaker, who spent decades in a constitutional law before coming to Congress, has made that argument personally in a brief filed to the Supreme Court. Now, they're trying to argue that proxy voting and remote voting are the same thing, right? Proxy voting is garbage, and it is unconstitutional, and I don't think it should be done just because it's unconstitutional. Plus, for all the reasons I laid out earlier, these people get paid to go and vote. Sure, there's extenuating circumstances. However, remote voting would be vastly different, in my opinion, right? We have technology to get around the Constitution, if you will, these days, right? With, like, Skype calls and Zoom calls and all this, that they could easily set something up where these people just Zoom call in to Congress to vote in person, essentially remote voting, right? And I think this is something that should be done, right? When they can't be there, if they have something, extenuating circumstance, whatever they got to go do, in their home district, they can just Zoom call the thing in, right? They could be in the middle of childbirth and Zoom call. Like, I know they really couldn't, but you get what I'm saying here, right? Like, proxy voting, it's kind of the same thing, but it really is different because, if you're on a Zoom call and you're voting, somebody else, sure, they're pressing the button, but you're there, you're stating your vote out loud, whatever, blah, 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 right? It is different, but I think Johnson's just making excuses here because we can see that, yes, they are different here. They're two very different things, just not being there and calling somebody and saying, hey, I want you to vote in this manner, versus actually being on the phone, in person, in the house, so everybody can actually see that you voted in a certain way, right? That's two vastly different things. Instead of just taking somebody's word for it, you actually tell the House, however the hell you want to vote, and then somebody presses the button for you. That's different. And I think that's fine. I think we can get around that, right? We can amend the Constitution to allow for this because there are extenuating circumstances where people do need to be, back home, funerals, chemotherapy, like they are, all the reasons they said, plus more. Now, I don't think this should be just an excuse for everybody not to show up, right? It needs to be a true emergency, extenuating circumstance, funeral, if you're having surgery, blah, 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 blah. You get it, right? Plus, they could also, if somebody is having surgery or they are in the middle of childbirth, they could, delay the vote for a little while, let them come out of whatever the hell they're doing, and then have the vote with a Zoom call, so they will be in there in person, essentially. They won't actually physically be there, but their voice will be there. I think that's fine. And I don't know why anybody, I don't know if this is what the proposal actually is. I don't think it is. It doesn't sound like it from reading the argument. But when they say remote voting, that's what brings to mind to me, right? That to me, remote voting would be you actually being on a Zoom call or on a telephone call, something to where other people can actually hear exactly what you're voting for. Right? It's not just taking somebody else's word for it that said, hey, they want to vote this way. Right? It's actually kind of physically being there in person, or essentially being there in person. But let's keep going. It's unfortunate. I have great empathy for all of our young women legislators who are of birthing age. It's a real quandary, Johnson told CNN, but I'm afraid it doesn't fit with the language of the Constitution, and that's the inescapable truth that we have. And he's totally right about that, right? Like, the language of the Constitution says that they have to show up. And once again, I don't know if what I'm proposing here is what she is proposing. It sounds like that's what came to mind when I heard remote voting. But I don't know, it doesn't sound like it from his responses. It doesn't sound like that's what they're promoting whatsoever. Like, Democrats allowed for this during the pandemic. That was an extenuating circumstance, and Republicans overturned that, which that should have been overturned once the pandemic died down by Democrats, because they didn't lose their majority until 2022, which the pandemic was over by that point, right? So they obviously don't care about their jobs, Democrats, which is blatant to me. I can see that. They just don't care about their jobs. Most congressmen don't care about their jobs. I'll put it that way. Republicans, Democrats alike don't care about their jobs. Some of them do, right? Anna Paulina Luna is one of those 10, 15 Republicans that are congressmen that are actually good, that actually care about their constituents back home, or at least they act like they give off the air that they care about everybody back home because they vote in the interests of their constituents back home. They don't seem to just vote in the interests of the lobby, right? Like Thomas Massie, Chip Roy. It's great. It's just absolutely great. Some of these people, the way they vote, the things they say. Chip Roy is amazing. Chip Roy is my favorite congressman, in case you didn't know that, right? Because he gets out there on the House floor and he rails against Republicans, Democrats, anybody that makes bonehead decisions that don't make any sense, that don't align with America first, right? Because that's what Congress should be. All congressmen should be America first, because they are representing the interests of their constituents back home. And I don't think their constituents back home care for sending money to Ukraine, right? Yeah, sure, blah, 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 we need to support Ukraine, but hang on just a second. If that means that we're going to continue this fight just for the sake of continuing the fight, or just for the sake of funding the military-industrial complex, I don't think that's a good reason, especially when you're not trying to stop the fighting. Well, like, we've all seen what Donald Trump is capable of now. It's been put on vast display. It's been put on display that he doesn't care about taking the credit for this, because Biden acts like he comes in and takes the credit for it, even though we know damn good and well that it's Donald Trump is the reason that deal got across the line. That's coming to an end Sunday. As a matter of fact, the ceasefire is going into place Sunday. And it's because Donald Trump come in and said, look, you're gonna have hell to pay if you don't give back those hostages. We're gonna blow the smithereens out of you. I'm sure you haven't heard that term in a while, but this is what I'm talking about. America first. It's in our interest for these wars abroad to stop, because we feel over here, for some reason, it's incumbent upon us to fund these wars. And I don't think that's the case. But for some reason, we've convinced the American population at large that it's incumbent upon America to fund these proxy wars, which is ridiculous. And I've been railing against this to try to get people to stop thinking in this manner. We don't. Why don't we just put a stop to these wars, right? It is that simple. There is deals that can be worked out, right? Israel needs to stop doing what it does to provoke these people, right? To turn these people into terrorists. Right? I think that's correct. Right? Terrorism is not an excuse for what Israel has done. But, right, we need to get to the root problems of this, work those deals out, and then shake hands, and everybody can be happy at that point. Now, there's always going to be problems erupt. People are going to do things that other people ain't going to like, and I get it. I'm not so naive to think that that's not the case, right? And once again, terrorism is not an excuse for what Israel has done. But I think all these, Donald Trump has proved that you can work these deals out, and everybody can walk away unhappy, but satisfied, if you will, right? But I think I've gotten off into the weeds. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Do y'all think that my proposal is a good idea and that we should propose this to our congressman? Like, hey, we should have some sort of setup to where these people can Zoom call in and vote for these things, right? Because especially right now when we have such a thin majority, right? We need every vote counts out, essentially, right? Y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.